and it's artificial stupidity. It's amazing. Loving it. I was just looking on Model Scope AI. It's uh, more text to video. You know, it's unbelievable stuff going on here. All right, so ooh, 22 frames, man. What is going on? And I ain't got my microphone over here. I can't even hear what I'm. Can't even hear what I'm talking about behind the. So this is really amazing. I've really had a rough time of it. But it's coming up on my first year as a gamer. And it's been a hard slog. I go up in here in Mech Arena and I don't buy nothing. Not with real money. I will buy stuff with imaginary money that I can imaginary earn in imaginary land. But I don't take real money. So somebody was telling me, they were like, man, you got to buy something. Like, come on, 98 cents. You know, buy this fragment gun. And I'm like, I'm trying to see, as soon as I buy something with real money, it's not interesting anymore. I'm trying to see what would happen if you didn't spend any money. And I'm about to find out. Let's see. Well, slowly, gradually. Oh, it's 5 versus 5 deathmatch. Oh, I really miss my free for all. I love a free for all. Let's see.
The Bontrop E. Road by Albert Ernest James. Letter of Transmittal. Department of the Interior, the Ethnological Survey. Manila, February 3, 1904. Sir, I have the honor to submit a study of the Bontrop E. Road made for this survey during the year 1903. It is transmitted with a recommendation that it be published as volume I of a series of scientific studies to be issued by the Ethnological Survey for the Philippine Islands. Respectfully, Albert Ernest James, Chief of the Ethnological Survey. Honorable Dean C. Lister, Secretary of the Interior, Manila, PI. Preface. After an expedition of 2 months in September, October, and November 1902, among the people of northern Luzon it was decided that the Igorot of Bontrop Pueblo, in the province of Lipado Bontrop, are as typical of the primitive mountain agriculturist of Luzon as any group visited, and that ethnologic investigations directed from Bontrop Pueblo would enable the investigator to show the culture of the primitive mountaineer of Luzon as well as or better than investigations centered elsewhere. A Accompanied by Mrs. Jenks, the writer took up residence in Bontoc, Puebla the 1st of January, 1903, and remained 5 months. The following data were gathered during that Bontoc residence, the previous expedition of 2
Sorry.
months, and a residence of about 6 weeks a month, the Bank of Eagle. The accompanying illustrations are mainly from photographs. Some of them were
I don't
taken in
even care.
April 1903 by Honorable Dean C. Lister, Secretary of the Interior. Others are the
You
work
wanna
of
be out
Mr.
here.
Charles Martin, government photographer, and were taken in January 1903. The others were made by the writer to supplement those taken by Mr. Martin, whose time was limited in the area. Credit for each photograph is given with the halftone as it appears. I wish to express my gratitude for the many favors of the only other Americans living in Bontoc province during my stay there,
Oh, no.
namely Lieutenant Governor Truman K. Hunt, M.D. Constabulary
Better
Lieutenant,
rhyme.
now Captain Elmer Ray Edmond, and Mr. William F. Smith, American teacher. In the following pages, native words have their syllabic divisions, shown by hyphens and their accented syllables and vowels marked in the various sections wherein words are considered technically for the first time, and also in the vocabulary in the last chapter. In all other places they are unmarked. A later study of the language may show that errors have been made in writing sentences, since it was not always possible to give a consistent answer to the question as to what part of a sentence constitutes a single word, and time was too limited for any extensive language study. The following alphabet has been used in writing native words. A as in FAR. Spanish Ramo, A as in LAW. As O in French OR, A as the I in Isle. Spanish K, A as a little note. As AU in Spanish Auto, B as in bad. Spanish BAJAR, CH as in check. Spanish Chico, D as in dog. Spanish DAR, E as in A. Spanish Hal, E as in them. Spanish COMEN, F as in fight. Spanish Firmer, G as in GO. Spanish GOZAR, H as in HE. Tagalog BAHAY, I as in P. Spanish HIJO1 as in pig, K as in king, L as in man. Spanish LENTE, M as in MAN. Spanish MENOS, N as in noun. Spanish JAEON, NG as in finger. Spanish lengua, O as in no. Spanish nosotros, OI as in boil, P as in pool. Spanish curl, Q as CH in German itch, F as in sauce. Spanish SORDO, SH as in shell. SCH in French charmer, T as in touch. Spanish TOMAR, U as in wool. Spanish unknown, U as in bud, U as in German coat, V as in bow. Spanish vulgar, W as in no. Nearly as OU in French wing, Y as in you. Spanish yacht. It seems not improper to say a word here regarding some of my commonest impressions of the Bontoc Eagle Out. Physically he is a clean man, well-built, dark brown man of medium stature, with no evidence of degeneracy. He belongs to that extensive stock of primitive people of which the Malay is most commonly named. I do not believe he has received any of his characteristics, as a group, from either the Chinese or Japanese, though this theory has frequently been presented. The Bontoc man would be a savage if it were not that his geographic location compelled him to become an agriculturist. Necessity drove him to this art of peace. In everyday life his actions are deliberate, but he is not lazy. He is remarkably industrious for a primitive man. In his agricultural labors he has strength, determination, and endurance. On the trail, as a cargatter, or burden bearer for Americans, he is patient and uncomplaining, and earns his wage in the sweat of his brow. His social life is lowly, and before marriage is most primitive. But a man has only one wife, too, whom he is usually faithful. The social group is decidedly democratic. There are no slaves. The people are neither drunkards, gamblers, nor sportsmen. There is little color in the life of the Igorot. He is not very inventive and seems to have little imagination. His chief recreation certainly is most enjoyed and highly prized recreation is headhunting. But headhunting is not the passion within that it is with many peoples. His religion is at base the most primitive religion known, animism, or spirit belief, but he has somewhere grasped the idea of one God, and has made this belief inappropriately a part of his life. He is a very likable man, and there is little about his primitiveness that is repulsive. He is of a kindly disposition, is not servile, and is generally trustworthy. He has a strong sense of humor. He is decidedly friendly to the American, whose superiority he recognizes, and whose methods he desires to learn. The boys in school are quick and bright, and their teacher pronounces them superior to Indian and Mexican children he has taught in Mexico, Texas, and New Mexico. 1. Briefly, I believe in the future development of the Bontoc Igorot for the following reasons. He has an exceptionally fine physique for his stature and has no vices to destroy his body. He has courage, which no one who knows him seems ever to think of questioning. He is industrious, has a bright mind, and is willing to learn. His institutions, governmental, religious, and social, are not radically opposed to those of modern civilization, as, for instance, are many institutions of the Mohammedanized people of Mindanao, the Sulu archipelago, but are such, it seems to me, as will quite readily yield to or associate themselves with modern institutions. I recall with great pleasure the months spent in Bontoc Pueblo, and I have a most sincere interest in and respect for the Bontoc Igorot as a man. Introduction. The readers of this monograph are familiar with the geographic location of the Philippine archipelago. However, to have the facts clearly in mind, it will be stated that the group lies entirely within the north, towards zone, extending from 4 degree 40 feet northward to 21 degree 3 feet and from 116 degree 40 feet to 126 degree 34 feet east longitude. It is, thus about 1,000 miles from north to south and 550 miles from east to west. The Pacific Ocean washes its eastern shores, the sea salutes its southern, and the China Sea its western and northern shores. It is about 630 kilometers, or 400 miles, from the China coast, and lies due east from French Indochina. The Bateans group of islands, stretching north of Luzon, has members nearer from all 7 Luzon. On the southwest Borneo is sighted from Philippine territory. Briefly, it may be said the archipelago belongs to Asia, geologically, zoologically, and botanically, rather than to Oceania, and that, apparently, the entire archipelago has shared a common origin and existence. There is evidence that it was connected with the mainland by solid earth in the early or middle tertiary. For a long geologic time the land was low and swampy. At the end of the Eocene a great upheaval occurred. There were foldings and crumplings, igneous rock was thrust into the distorted mass, and the islands were considerably elevated above the sea. During the latter part of the tertiary period the land seemed to have subsided and to have been separated from the mainland. About the close of the subsidence eruptions began which are continued to the present by such volcanoes as Taal and Leon in Luzon and Abo in Mindanao. No further subsidence appears to have occurred after the close of the tertiary, though the gradual elevation beginning then had many lapses, as is evidenced by the numerous sea beaches, often seen one above the other in horizontal tiers. The elevation continues today in an almost invisible way. The islands have been greatly enlarged during the elevation by the constant building of coral around the submerged shores. It is believed that man had appeared in the Great Malay Archipelago before this elevation began. It is thought by some that he was in the Philippines in the later tertiary, but there are no data as yet throwing light on this question. Today the archipelago lies like a large net in the natural pathway of people fleeing themselves from the supposed birthplace of the primitive Malayan stock, mainly from Java, Sumatra, and the adjacent Malay Peninsula, or, more likely, the larger mainland. It spreads over a large area and is well fitted by its numerous islands, some 3,100, and its innumerable bays and coastal pockets to catch up and hold the primitive, seafaring people. There are and long have been daring Malayan pirates, and there is Today among the 7 islands are numerous class. The Semel, living most of the time on the sea, yet they all keep close to land, except in time of calm, and when a storm is brewing they strike out, straight for the nearest shore like scared children. The ocean currents and the monsoons have been greatly instrumental in driving different people through the seas into the Philippine Net. 2. The Tagapola, on the west coast of the Gulf of Davao, Mindanao, have a tradition that they are descendants of many cast on their present shores from a distant landing of the Monogo women of the territory. The Bagobo, also in the Gulf of Davao, claim they came to their present home in a few boats generations ago. They purposely left their former land to flee from headhunting, a practice in their earlier home, but no, they do not
Please don't
Mindanao.
kill me.
What percent of the people coming originally to the archipelago was castaway, nomadic, or immigrant? It is impossible to judge, but there have doubtless also been many systematic and prolonged migrations from nearby lands, as from Borneo, Celebes, Sinur, etc. Primitive man is represented in the Philippines today not alone by one of the lowest natural types of savage man the historic world has.
It's one of my favorite bot names.
The small, dark brown, bearded, crisp woolly-haired Negritos, but by some 30 distinct primitive Malayan tribes or dialect groups, among which are believed to be some of the lowest of the stock in existence. In northern Luzon is the Igorot, a typical primitive Malayan. He is a muscular, smooth-faced, brown man of a type between the delicate and the coarse. In Mindoro the Manguian is found, an especially lowly Malayan, who may prove to be a true savage in culture. In Mindanao is the slender, delicate, smooth-faced brown man of which the Cebuano, in the western part, is typical. There are the Bagobo and the extensive Monobo of eastern Mindanao in the neighborhood of the Gulf of Davao, the latter people following the Agusan River practically to the north coast of Mindanao. In southeastern Mindanao, in the vicinity of Mount Opo and also north of the Gulf of Davao, are the Ana. They are scattered people and evidently a Negrito and primitive Malayan mixture. In Nueva Vizcaya, Nueva Ecija, Isabela, and perhaps Principe of Luzon, are the Ibano. They are slender, delicate, bearded people with an artistic nature quite different from any other now known in the island, but somewhat like that of the Ana of Mindanao. Their artistic wood production suggests the insides work of distant dwellers of the Pacific, as that of the people of New Guinea, Fiji Islands, or Hervey Islands. The 7 so-called Christian tribes, 3, occupy considerable areas in the coastwise land and low plains of most of the larger islands of the archipelago, represent migrations to the archipelago subsequent to those of the Igorot and comparable tribes. The last migrations of brown men into the archipelago are historic. The Spaniard discovered the inward flow of the large Samoan Molo group after his arrival in the 16th century. The movement of this nomadic Gypsy Semel has not ceased today, but continues to flow in and out among the small southern islands. Besides the peoples here cited, there are a score of others scattered about the archipelago, representing many grades of primitive culture, but those mentioned are sufficient to suggest that the islands have been very effective in gathering up and holding diverse groups of primitive men. 4. Part 1. The Igorot Culture Group. Igorot Land. Northern Luzon, or Igorot Land, is by far the largest area in the Philippine archipelago having any semblance of regularity. It is roughly rectangular in form, extending 2½ degrees north and south and 2 degrees east and west. There are 2 prominent geographic features in northern Luzon. One is the beautifully picturesque mountain system, the Caraballos, the most important range of which is the Caraballos Occidentals, extending north and south throughout the western part of the territory. This range is the famous Cordillera Central for about 3/4 of its extent northward, beyond which it is known as Cordillera del Norte. The other prominent feature is the extensive drainage system of the eastern part, the Rio Grande do Carvalho draining northward into the China Sea about 2/3 of the territory of northern Luzon. It is the largest drainage system and the largest river in the archipelago. The surface of northern Luzon is made up of 4 distinct types. First is the coastal plain, a consistently narrow strip of land, generally not over 3 or 4 miles wide. The soil is sandy silt with a considerable admixture of vegetable matter. In some places it is loose and shifts readily before the winds. Here and there are stretches of alluvial clay loam. The sandy areas are often covered with coconut trees, and the alluvial deposits along the rivers frequently become beds of mica, pumice, far back as tide water. The plain areas are generally poorly watered except during the rainy season, having only the streams and the steep mountains passing through them. These riverbeds are broad, flaky, impassable torrents in the rainy season, and are shallow, or practically dry during half the year, with stony and narrow, lazy, red flowing among the boulders. This plain area on the west coast is the undisputed dwelling place of the Christian Ilocano, occupying Pupus in Union, Ilocos Sur, and Ilocos North provinces. Almost nothing is known of the eastern, coastal plain area. It is believed to be extremely narrow, and has at least one pueblo of Christianized Tagalog, the famous province, the scene of Aguinaldo's capture. The second type of surface is the coastal hill area. It extends from the coastal plain wriggling back to the mountains, and is thought to be much narrower on the eastern coast than on the western. In fact, it may be quite absent on the eastern. It is the remains of a tilted plain sloping seaward from an altitude of about 1,000 feet to one of, say, 100 feet, and its hilly nature is due to erosion. These hills are generally covered only with grasses. The sheltered moister places often produce rank growths of tall, coarse coconut grass. 5. The soil varies from dark clay loam through the sandy loams to clay, extensive deposits of coarse gravel. The level stretches in the hills on the west coast are generally in the possession of the Christian peoples, though here and there are small pueblos of the large Igorot group. The Igorot and these pueblos are undergoing transformation, and quite generally wear clothing similar to that of the Ilocano. The third type of surface is the mountain country, the temperate zone of the tropics. It is the habitat of the Igorot. From the western, coastal hill area the mountains rise abruptly in parallel ranges lines in a general north and south direction, and they subside only in the foothills west of the Great Level Bottomland bordering the Rio Grande do Cartagena. The Cordillera Central is as fair and about as varied a mountain country as the tropic sun shines on. It has mountains out, which one may find from tropic forest jungles into open, pine forested parks, and up again into the dense tropic forest, with its drapery of vines, its fairy-hanging orchids, and its graceful, lilting fern trees. It has mountains forested to the upland on one side with tropic jungle and on the other with sturdy palm trees. At the crest, lie the children of the tropics meet and intermingle with those of the temperate zone. There are gigantic, Roman, bareback Susanni, covering with the carpet of grass periodically green and brown. There are long, rambling, skeleton ranges with deer in their pine forests, gradually creeping up the sides to the crests. There are solitary, volcanoes, now extinct, standing like them through the sea let alone when nature humbled the surrounding earth. There are sculptured lime rocks, cities of them, with grey hovels and mansions and cathedrals. The mountains present one interesting geologic feature. The hiker is repeatedly delighted to find this trail passing quite easily from one peak or ascent to another over a natural connecting embankment. On either side of this connecting ridge is the head of a deep, steep-walled canyon, the which is only a few hundred feet broad at base and only half a dozen to 20 feet wide at the top. These ridges invariably have the appearance of being composed of soft earth and not of rock. They are appreciated by the primitive man, who takes advantage of them as of bridges. The mountains are well watered. The summits of most of the mountains have perpetual springs of pure, cool waters. On the very tops of some, there are occasional perpetual water holes ranging from 10 to 100 feet across. These holes have neither surface outlet nor inlet. There are two such within 2 hours of Bonto Pueblo. They are the favorite wallowing places of the Caraballo, the so-called water buffalo, 6, both the wild and the half-domesticated animals. The mountain streams are generally in deep gorges winding in and out between the sharp falls of the mountains. Their beds are strewn with boulders, often of immense size, which have withstood the whirling of waters and storms. During the rainy season, the streams racing between the bases of two mountain ridges are mad and porous. Some streams, born and fed on the very peaks, tumble 100, 500, even 1,500 feet over precipices, landing white as snow in the merciless torrent at the mountain base. During the dry season, the rivers are fordable at frequent intervals, but during the rainy season, beginning in the Cordillera Central in June and lasting well through October, even the natives hesitate often for a week at a time to cross them. The absence of lakes is noteworthy in the mountain country of northern Luzon. In fact, in all of northern Luzon, the two large lakes frequently shown on maps of Cagayan province, one east and one west of the Rio Grande do Cagayan near the 18th parallel, are not known to exist, though it is probable there is some foundation for the Spaniards' belief in the existence of at least the eastern one. In the bottomland of the Rio Grande do Cagayan, about 6 hours west of Camiguin-Nueva, near the provincial border of Cagayan and Isabela, there were 100 acres of land covered with shallow water the last of October 1902, just at the end of the dry season of the Cagayan Valley. The surface was well covered with rank, coarse grasses and filled with aquatic plants, especially with lilies. Apparently the waters were slowly receding, since the earth about the margins was supporting the short, coarse grasses that tell of the gradual drying out of soil front covered with water. In the mountains near Sagada, Bontoc province, there is a very small lake, and one or two others have been reported at Bontoc. But the mountains must be said to be practically lakeless. Another mountain range of northern Luzon, of which practically no details are known, is the Sierra Madre, extending nearly the full length of the country close to the eastern coast. It seems to be an unbroken, continuous range, and, as such, is the longest mountain range in the archipelago. The fourth type of surface is the level areas. These areas lie mainly along the river courses and vary from a few rods in width to the valley of the Rio Grande do Cagayan, which is often 50 miles in width, and probably more. There are, besides these river valleys, varying tracts of level plains which may most correctly be termed mountain tablelands. The limited mountain valleys and tablelands are the immediate home of the Igorot. The valleys are worn by the streams, and, in turn, are built up, level, and enriched by the sand and alluvium deposited annually by the floods. They are generally open, grass-covered areas, though some have become densely forested since being left above the high water of the streams. The broad valley of the Rio Grande do Cagayan is not occupied by the Igorot. It is too poorly watered and forested to meet his requirements. It is mainly a vast pasture, supporting cow deer. Along the foothills and forest-grown creek and river bottoms, there are many wild hogs. And in some areas herds of wild carabaos and horses are found. Near the main river is a numerous population of Christians. Many are Americano imported originally by the tobacco companies to carry on the large tobacco plantations of the valley.
Come here, still
and others
alive.
are the native Cagayan. The tablelands were once generally forested, but today many are deforested, undulating, beautiful pastures.
Dead now.
Some were cleared by the Igorot for agriculture, and doubtless others by forest fires, such as one harvesting this season during the dry season destroying the mountain forests of northern Luzon. General observations have not been made on the temperature and humidity of much of the mountain country of northern Luzon. However, scientific observations have been made and recorded for a series of about 10 years at Baguio, Benguet province, at an altitude of 4,777 feet, and it is from the published data gathered that the following facts are gained. 7. The temperature and rainfall are the average means deduced from many years' observations. Month, mean temperature, number of rainy days, rainfall, degree F. Inches. January 63.5, 0.06. February 62.1, 0.57. March 66.9, 3, 1.46. April 70.5, 1, 0.32. May 68.3, 16, 4.02. June 67.2, 26, 12.55. July 66.5, 26, 14.43. August 64.6, 31, 37.03. September 67.0, 23, 11.90. October 67.0, 13, 4.95. November 68.2, 13, 2.52. December 66.0, 16, 5.47. It is seen that April is the hottest month of the year and February is the coldest. The absolute lowest temperature recorded is 42.10 degrees Fahrenheit, noted February 18, 1902. Of course, the temperature varies considerably, a fact due largely to altitude and prevailing winds. The height of the rainy season is in August, during which it rains every day, with an average precipitation of 37.03 inches. Baguio is known as much rainier than many other places in the Cordillera Central, yet it must be taken as more or less typical of the entire mountain area of northern Luzon, throughout which the rainy season is very uniform. Usually the days of the rainy season are beautiful and clear during the forenoon, but all-day rains are not rare, and each season has 2 or 3 storms of pelting, driving rain which continues without a break for 4 or 5 days. Igorot peoples. In several languages of northern Luzon, the word Igorot means mountain people. Dr. Pardo de Taveras says the word Igorot is composed of the root word Golet, meaning, in Tagalog, mountain, chain, and a prefix I, meaning dweller in or people of. Morga, in 1609 used the word as Igolet. Early Spaniards also used the word, frequently as Igorots, and today some groups of the Igorot, as the Bontoc group, do not pronounce the R sound, which common usage now puts in the word. The Spaniards applied the term to the wild peoples of present Benguet and Napano provinces, now a short-haired, peaceful people. In after years its common application spread eastward to the natives of the Comandancia of Huayangan in the present province of Nueva Vizcaya and northward to those of Bontoc. The word Igorot is now adopted tentatively as the name of the extensive primitive Malayan people of northern Luzon because it is applied to a very large number of the mountain people by themselves and also has a recognized usage in ethnologic and other writings.
There was a guy who was trying to get married.
As Igorot is adopted for both singular and plural,
you went to the lineup
to
see the bride, the
and
beautiful
phonetic,
person.
And because so far as it is possible to
and he didn't
do
realize
so,
the Shiva Mayan was working on his behind, and he looked like a monkey.
Words as it seems necessary or best to incorporate in a language, especially in scientific language. The 16th degree of north latitude cuts across Luzon probably as far south as any people of the Igorot group are now located. It is believed that occupy all the mountain country northward in the island, except the territory of Libana in the southeastern part of the area and some of the most inaccessible mountains of eastern Luzon, which are occupied by Negritos. There are from 150,000 to 225,000 Igorot and Igorot land. The census of the archipelago taken in 1903 will give the number
love when they have this weapon.
185,000. In the northern part of Pangasinan province,
awesome
the southwestern part of the territory, there are reported about 3,150 pagan people under various local names as Igorots, Infield Pagans, and Nuevos Cristianos. In Benguet province there are some 23,000, commonly known as Benguet Igorots. In Union province there are about 4,400 primitive people, generally called Igorots. Ilocos Sur has nearly 8,000, half of whom are known to history as Tingians, and half as Igorots. The province of Ilocos North has nearly 9,000, which number is divided quite evenly between Igorots, Tingians, and Infield. Albuquerque province has in round numbers 13,500 pagan Malayans, most of whom are historically known as Alzados and Tingians. These Tingian ethnically belong to the Great Igorot group, and in northern Bontoc province, where they are known as Ignek, flow into and are not distinguishable from the Igorot. but no effort is made in this monograph to cut the Tingyan asunder from the position they have gained in historic and ethnologic writings as a separate people. The province of Lepanto Bontoc has, according to records, about 70,500 Igorots, Tingyans, and Kalingas, but I believe a more careful census will show it has nearer 100,000. Nueva Ecija is reported to have half 100 Tingyans. The province of Nueva Vizcaya has some 46,000 people locally and historically known as Banayans, a large group in the Spanish Comandancia of Payangan. The Philippines, also a large group of people closely associated with the Binondo. The Isinay, a small group in the southern part of the province. The Illimit, a considerable group of Silipan people dwelling along the Illimit River in the Comandancia of Payangan. And the small Alangan group of the Binondo people of Payangan. Cagayan province has about 11,000 Kalingos and Itunes. Isabela province is reported as having about 2,700 primitive Malayans of the Igorot group. They are historically known as Igorots, Gadanes, Kalingas, and Ifugales. The following forms of the above names of different dialect groups of Igorot have been adopted by the Ethnological Survey: Tinguian, Kalinga, Banayan, Isanay, Ilamet, Silipan, Ayangan, Ipupao, and Gadan. It is believed that all the mountain people of the northern half of Luzon, except the Negritos, came to the island in some of the earliest of the movements that swept the coast of the archipelago from the south and spread over the inland areas, succeeding waves of people having more culture driving the cooler blood flows farther inland. Though originally of one blood, and though they are all today in a similar broad culture grade, that is, all are mountain agriculturists, and all are, or until recently have been, headhunters, yet it does not follow that the Igorot groups have, today, identical culture. Quite the contrary is true. There are many and wide differences even in important cultural expressions which are due to environment, long isolation, and in some cases to ideas and processes borrowed from different neighboring peoples. Very misleading statements have sometimes been made in regard to the Igorot customs from different groups have been jumbled together in one description until a man has been pictured who cannot be found anywhere. All, except the most general statements, are worse than wasted unless a particular group is designated. An illustration of some of the differences between groups of typical Igorot will make this clearer. I select as examples the people of Bontoc and the adjoining Payangan district in northern Nueva Vizcaya province, both of whom are commonly known as Igorot. It must be noted that the people of both areas are practically unmodified by modern culture and both are constant headhunters. With scarcely one exception, Bontoc Pueblos are single clusters of buildings. In Banawi Pueblo of the Payangan area there are 11 separate groups of dwellings, each group situated on a prominence which may be easily protected by the inhabitants against an enemy below them. And other Payangan Pueblos are similarly built. As will be brought out in succeeding chapters, the social and political institutions of the two peoples differ widely. In Bontoc the head weapon is a battle axe, in Payangan it is a long knife. Most of the head-hunting practices of the two peoples are different, especially as to the disposition of the skulls of the victims. Bontoc men wear their hair long and have developed a small pocket hat to confine the hair and contain small objects carried about. The men of Payangan wear their hair short, have nothing whatever of the nature of the pocket hat, but have developed a unique handbag which is used as a pocket. In the Payangan area, highly conventionalized wood carving art has developed. Beautiful eating spoons with figures of men and women carved on the handles, and food bowls cut in animal figures are everywhere found. While in Bontoc only the most crude and artless wood carving is made. In language there is such a difference that Bontoc men who accompanied me into the northern part of the large Payangan area, only a long day from Bontoc Pueblo, could not converse with Payangan men, even about such common things as travelers in this strange territory need to learn. It is because of the many differences in cultural expressions between, even small and neighboring communities of the primitive people of the Philippine archipelago that I wish to be understood in this paper, as speaking of the one group, the Bontoc Igorot culture group. A group, however, in every essential typical of the numerous Igorot peoples of the mountains of northern Luzon. Part 2. The Bontoc culture group. Bontoc culture area. The Bontoc culture area nearly equals the old Spanish Distrito Politico-Militar of Bontoc, presented to the American public in a government publication in 1908. The Spanish Bontoc area was estimated about 4,500 square kilometers. This was probably too large an estimate, and it is undoubtedly an overestimate for the Bontoc culture area, the northern border of which is farther south than the border of the Spanish Bontoc area. The area is well in the center of northern Luzon and is cut off by watersheds from other territory, except on the northeast. The most prominent of these watersheds is Polis Mountain, extending along the eastern and southern sides of the area. It is supposed to reach a height of over 7,000 feet. The western watershed is an undifferentiated range of the Cordillera Central. To the north stretches a large area of the present province of Bontoc, though until 1903 most of that northern territory was embraced in the province of Abra. The province of Isabela lies to the east. Nueva Vizcaya and Lepanto border the area on the south, and Lepanto and Abra border it on the west. The Bontoc culture area lies entirely in the mountains, and, with the exception of two pueblos, it is all drained northeastward into the Rio Grande de Cagayan by one river, the Rio Chico de Cagayan. But the Rio Cebu, coursing more directly eastward, is a considerable stream. Today, one main trail enters Bontoc province. It was originally built by the Spaniards, and enters Bontoc Pueblo from the southwest, leading up from Chavans in Lepanto province. From Chavans there are two trails to the coast. One passes southward through Baguio in Benguet province and then stretches westward, terminating on the coast at San Fernando in Union province. The other, the one most commonly traveled to Bontoc, passes to the northwest, terminating on the coast of Candon in the province of Ilocos Sur. The main trail, entering Bontoc from Chavans, passes through the Pueblo and extends to the northeast, quite closely following the trend of the Chico River. In Spanish times it was seldom traveled farther than Basal, but several parties of Americans have been over it as far as the Rio Grande de Cagayan since November 1902. A second trail, also of Spanish origin, but now practically unused, enters the area from the south and connects Bontoc Pueblo, its northern terminus, with the valley of the Naguib River far south. It passes through the pueblos of Bimbang, Clayangan, and Banawi, in the province of Nueva Vizcaya. The main trail is today passable for a horseman from the coast, terminus to Tinglayan, 3 days beyond Bontoc Pueblo. Practically, all other trails in the area are simply wild footpaths of the Igorot. Candon, the coast terminus of the main trail, lies in the coastal plain area about 4 1/4 miles from the sea. From the coast to the small pueblo of Concepcion at the western base of the Cordillera Central is a half-day's journey. The first half of the trail passes over flat land, with here and there small pueblos surrounded by rice cementeras. There are almost no forests. The latter half is through the coastal hill area, and the trail frequently passes through small forests. It crosses several rivers, dangerous to ford in the rainy season, and winds in and out among attractive hills bearing clumps of graceful, plume-like bamboo. From Concepcion the trail leads up the mountain to Tila Pass, historic since the insurrection because of the grave stand made there by the young, ill-fated General Del Pilar. The climb to Tila Pass, from either side of the mountain, is one of the longest and most tedious in northern Luzon. The trail frequently turns short on itself, so that the front and rear parts of a pack train are traveling face to face, and one end is not more than 8 or 10 rods above the other on the side of the mountain. The last view of the sea from the Candon Bontoc trail is obtained at Tila Pass. From Concepcion to Olgopi, at the base of the mountain on the eastern side of the pass, The trail is about half a day long. From the pass it is a ceaseless drop down the steep mountain, but affords the most charming views of mountain
I couldn't get out of the way. I was too froze. It was froze.
The shifting direction of the turning trail and the
Okay, the
various
hill.
altitudes of the
The hill,
traveler
buddy.
present constantly changing scenes. Mountains and mountains ramble on before one.
Look
From
at some hill.
Algaki to Trevance, the trail passes over deforested
Nothing
rolling
worse than
mountain
trying to
land
heal a
with
bot.
safe drinking water in only one small spring. Many travelers who pass that part of the journey in the middle of the day complain loudly of the heat and thirst experienced there. Trevance, said to be 70 miles from Canton, is the capital of the dual province of Lepanto Bontoc. Bontoc Pueblo lies inland only about 35 miles farther, but the greater part of 2 days is usually
let me heal
required to
myself.
reach it. 20 minutes will carry a horseman down the bluff from Trevance across the swift Audra if the stream is fordable and start
Oh, that's
on
going
the
well.
eastward mountain climb. The first pueblo beyond Trevance is Caen, the old Spanish capital of the district. About 25 years ago the site was changed from Caen to Trevance because there was not sufficient suitable land at Caen. Caen is about 4 hours from Trevance, and every foot of the trail is up the mountain. A short distance beyond Caen, the trail divides to rejoin only at the outskirts of Bontoc Pueblo. But the right-hand or lower trail is not often traveled by horsemen. Up and up the mountain one climbs from about 1,800 feet at Trevance to about 6,000 feet among the pines, and then slowly descends, having crossed the boundary line between Lepanto and Bontoc's provinces to the Pueblo of Bagnan, the last one before the
How?
Bontoc culture
Quit it.
area is entered. It is customary to spend the night on the trail, as one goes into Bontoc either at Bagnan or at Sagada,
Stupid
a
turkey.
pueblo about 2 hours farther on. Only along the top of the high mountain, before Bagnan is reached, does the trail pass through a forest, otherwise it is always climbing up or winding about the mountains deforested probably by fires.
Phew.
Practically all the immediate territory on the right hand of the trail between Bagnan and Sagada is occupied by the beautifully terraced rice Santa Teresa Peruvian. The valley contains more than 1,000 acres so cultivated. At Sagada line rocks, some eroded into gigantic, massive forms, others into fantastic spires and domes, everywhere crop out from the grassy hills. Up and down the mountains, the trail leads, passing another small pine forest near Angeling and Titipan, about 4 hours from Bontoc, and then creeps on and, at last through the terraced entranceway into the mountain pocket, where Bontoc Pueblo lies, about 100 miles from the western coast, and, by government aneroid barometer, about 2,800 feet above the sea. Marks of Bontoc culture. It is difficult and often impossible to state the essential difference in culture which distinguishes one group of people from another. It is more difficult to draw lines of distinction, for the culture of one group almost imperceptibly flows into that of another adjoining it. However, 2 fundamental institutions of the people of Bontoc seem to differ from those of most adjoining people. One of these institutions has to do with the control of the pueblo. Bontoc has not developed the headman, the principal of the Spaniard, the bagman of the Bangok Igorot, the one rich man who becomes the pueblo leader. In Benguet province the headman is found in every pueblo, and he is so powerful that he often dominates half a dozen outlying barrios to the extent that he receives a large share, often 1/2, of the output of all the productive labors of the barrio. Immediately north of the Bontoc area, in Tulayan, the headman is again found. He has no place whatever in Bontoc. The control of the pueblos of the Bontoc area is in the hands of groups of old men. However, each group, called Intutukan, operate only within a single political and geographic portion of the pueblo, so that no one group has in charge the control of the pueblo. The pueblo is a loose federation of smaller political groups. The other institution is a social development. It is the Ilag, an institution of trial marriage. It is not known to exist among adjoining people, but is found throughout the area in which the Intutukan exists. They are apparently coextensive. I was repeatedly informed that the Ilag is not found in the Benali area south of Bontoc or in the Tulayan area east or among the Tingian to the north, or Bengal far southwest, or Nepal immediately southwest, though I have some reason to believe that both the Intutukan and Alag exist in a crumbling way among certain Lepanto Igorot. Besides these two institutions, there are other different marks of culture between the Bontoc area and adjoining people. Some of these were suggested a few pages back, others will appear in the following pages. Without doubt, the limits of the spread of the common culture have been determined mainly by the physiography of the country. One of the two pupils in the area not on the common drainage system is Lias, but Lias was largely built by migration from Bontoc Pueblo, the heartbeat of Bontoc culture. Barlik, the other Pueblo not on the common drainage system, both Barlik and Lias are on the Cebu River, lies between Lias and the other Pueblos of the Bontoc culture area, and so, naturally has been drawn in line and held in line with the culture of the geographic area in which it is located. Its institutions are those of its environment. The Bontoc man. Introduction. The Bontoc Igorot has been in Bontoc longer than the endurance of tradition, for he says he never lived elsewhere, that he never drove any people out before him, and that he has never driven, and has always called himself the Ipukao or Fugo the people. This word for people survives not only throughout the province of Bontoc but also far toward the northern end of Luzon, where it appears as Apayao or Yays. Bontoc designates the people of the Guayangan region as Ifugo, though a part of them at least have a different name for themselves. The Bontoc Igorot have their center in the Pueblo of Bontoc, pronounced Bantac, a Spanish corruption of the Igorot name, Bantac, a common native word for mountain, the original name of the Pueblo. To the northwest their culture extends to that of the historic Tingian, a long-haired folk geographically cut off by watershed. To the east of the Cordillera Central the Tingian call themselves Itneg. To the northeast the Bontoc culture area embraces the Pueblo of Basal, stopping short of Tinglayan. The eastern limit of Bontoc culture is fixed by the Pueblos of Lias and Barlik, and is thus about coextensive with the province. Southward the area includes all to the top of the watershed of Polas Mountain, which turns southward the numerous streams feeding the Rio Magat. The Pueblos south of this watershed, Lubang, Sail, Banawi, etc., belong to the short-haired people of Guayangan culture. To the west, Bontoc culture extends to the watershed of the Cordillera Central, which turns westward the various affluents of the Rio de la Bra. On the southwest this cuts off the short-haired Lepanto Igorot, whose culture seems to be more like to that of Benguet than Bontoc. The men of the Bontoc area know none of the peoples by whom they are surrounded by the names history gives or the peoples designate themselves, with the exception of the Lepanto Igorot, the Itneg, and the Ilocano of the west coast. They do not know the Tingian of Abra on their north and northwest by that name. They call them Itneg. Farther north are the people called by the Spaniards, Nabayuganes, Aripus, and Ipugios. To the northeast and east are the Kilingas, Comunanges, Baabananes, Dales, and Gedans, but Bontoc knows none of these names. Bontoc culture and Kalinga culture lie close together on the east, and the people of Bontoc Pueblo name all their eastern neighbors Itneg the same term they apply to the Tingian to the west and northwest, because, they say, they all wear great quantities of brass on the arms and legs. To the south of Bontoc are the Guayangan Igorot, the Manawi, division of which, at least, names itself Mayoyat, but whom Bontoc calls Ifugo. They designate the people of Bengal the Igorot of Bengal, but these peoples designate themselves Evaloyan, the northern part, and Cancone the southern part, neither of which names Bontoc knows. She has still another set of names for the people surrounding her, people whom she vaguely knows are there but of whom or of whose lands she has no first-hand knowledge. The people to the north are Enyanan, and the northern country is Logai. The Dayak are the eastern people, while Barlik is the name of the eastern and southeastern land. Avagotan are the people of the south, and Falik Avagotan is the south land. The people of the west are Luod and Falik Laod, or Loko. The provinces of Ilocos, North and Ilocos Sur, is the country line to the west and southwest. Some of the old men of Bontoc say that in the past the Igorot people once extended to the seacoast in the provinces of Ilocos North and Ilocos Sur. This, of course, is a tradition of the prehistoric time before the Ilocano invaded northern Luzon. But, as has been stated, the Bontoc people claim never to have been driven by that invasion, neither have they any knowledge of such a movement. It is not improbable, however, that traditions of the invasion may linger with the people near the coast and farther north. Historical sketch. It is regretted that the once voluminous historical records and data, which the Spaniards prepared and kept at Bontoc were burned. Tons of paper, they say, probably lit in 1898 or early in 1899 by Captain Angels, an insurrecto. However, from scanty printed historical data, but mostly from information gathered in Bontoc from Igorot and resident Ilocano, the following brief sketch is presented, with the hope that it will show the nature of the outside influences which have been about Bontoc for the past half-century prior to American occupation. It is believed that the data are sufficiently truthful for this purpose, but no claim is made for historical accuracy. It seems that in 1665 the Spanish governor of the Philippines, Governor General de Diego de Salcedo, sent an expedition from Manila into northern Luzon. Sometime during the 3 years the expedition, without its influence, was felt in Figlason and Tanalan, two Pueblos, in the western part of the Bontoc culture area, for history says they paid tribute. 9. It is not probable that any considerable party from the expedition penetrated the Igorot mountain country as far as the above Pueblos. After the year 1700 expeditions occasionally reached Cayenne, which, until about 25 years ago, as has been stated, was a Spanish capital. In 1852 the entire territory of present Lipano Bontoc and a large part of northern Nueva Vizcaya were organized as an independent distrito, under the name of Valle de Cayenne. 10. And a few years later, though the author does not give the date, Bontoc was established as an independent distrito. The Spaniards and Ilocano in and about Bontoc province say that it was about 50 years ago that the Spaniards first came to Bontoc. The time agrees very accurately with the time of the establishment of the district. From then until 1899 there was a Spanish garrison of 200 or 300 men stationed in Bontoc Pueblo. Christian Ilocano from the west coast of northern Luzon and the Christian Tagalog from Manila and vicinity were the soldiers. The Spanish comandante of the distrito, the head of the political military government, resided there, and there were also a few Spanish army officers and an army chaplain. A large garrison was quartered in Chervance. There was a church in both Bontoc and Chervance. In the district of Bontoc there was a Spanish post at Salgada, between the two capitals, Bontoc and Chervance. Farther to the east was a post at Tucucan and Sacosican, and farther east, at Basal, there was a post, a church, and a priest. Most of the Pueblos had Ilocano presidentes. The Igorot say that the Spaniards did little for them except to shoot them. There is yet a long, heavy wooden stock in Bontoc Pueblo in which the Igorot were imprisoned. Igorot women were made the mistresses of both officers and soldiers. Work, food, fuel, and lumber were not always paid for. All persons 18 or more years old were required to pay an annual tax of 50 cents or an equivalent value in rice. A day's wage was only 5 cents, so each family was required to pay an equivalent of 20 days' labor annually. In wild towns the principal men were told to bring and sow many thousand bunches of pele, the unthreshed rice.
I hate gambling.
If it was not all brought in, the soldiers frequently went for it, accompanied by Igorot warriors.
Who would want
They
that?
gathered at the rice, and sometimes burned the entire pueblo. Apad, the principal man of Tinglayan, was confined 6 years in Spanish jails at Bontoc and Brigham because he repeatedly failed to compel his people to bring in the amount of pele sent them. They say there were 3 small guardhouses on the outskirts of Bontoc Pueblo, and armed Igorots from an outside town were not allowed to enter. They were disarmed, and came and went under guard. The Spanish comandantes in charge of the province seem to have remained only about 2 years each. Saldero was the last one. Early in the 80s of the 19th century, the Comandante took his command to Barlik, a day east of Bontoc, to punish that town because it had killed people in Chaludin and Smoky. Barlik all but exterminated the command. Only 3 men escaped to tell the tale. Mendicota, a Spanish officer, went from Manila with a battalion of 1,000 soldiers to erase Barlik from the map. He was also accompanied from Bontoc by 800 warriors from that vicinity. The Barlik people fled to the mountains, losing only 7 men, whose heads the Bontoc Igorot cut off and brought home. Comandante Villameres is reported to have taken 20 soldiers and about 520 warriors of Bontoc and Smoky to punish Trukukin for killing a Smoky woman. The warriors returned with 3 heads. They say that in 1891 Comandante Alfaro took 40 soldiers and 1,000 warriors from the vicinity of Bontoc to Angkalum. 60 heads adorned the triumphant return of the warriors. In 1893, Nathan is said to have taken 100 soldiers and 500 warriors to Sadanga. They brought back 1 head. A few years later, Saldero went to clear out rebellious Sagada with soldiers and Igorot warriors. Bontoc reports that the warriors returned with 100 heads. The insurrectos appeared before Trifens 2 or 3 months after Saldero's bloody work in Sagada. The Spanish garrison fled before the insurrectos. The Spanish civilians went with them, taking their flocks and herds to Bontoc. 1,000 pesos was the price offered by the Igorot of Sagada to the insurrectos for Saldero's head when the Philippine soldiers passed through the pueblo. But Saldero made good his escape from Bontoc and left the country by boat from Vigan. The Bontoc Igorot assisted the insurrectos in many ways when they first came. About 2 miles west of Bontoc is a Spanish rifle pit, and there the Spanish soldiers, now swelled to about 600 men, lay in wait for the insurrectos. There on 2 hilltops an historic sham battle occurred. The 2 forces were nearly a mile apart, and at that distance they exchanged rifle bullets 3 days. The Spaniards finally surrendered, on condition of safe escort to the coast. For 50 years, they had conquered their enemy who were armed only with spear and axe. But the insurrectos were armed with guns. However, the really hard pressing came from the rear. There were still the axe and spear, and few soldiers from Cardo or Trench who tried to bring food or water for the fighting men ever reported why they were delayed. The feeling of friendship between the Igorot and insurrectos was so strong that when the insurrectos asked the Igorot to go to Manila to fight the new enemy, the Americans, 400 warriors, armed only with spear, battle axe, and shield, went a 3 weeks journey to get American heads. At Caloocan, just outside Manila, they met the American Army early in February 1899. They drew their spears. The Americans fired their guns, which must be brothers to the thunder, the Igorot said, and they let fall their remaining weapons, and, panic-stricken, started home. All but 13 arrived in safety. They are not ashamed of their defeat and retreat. They made a mistake when they went to fight the Americans, and they were quick to see it. They are largely blessed with a saving sense of humor, and some of the warriors who were at Caloocan have been known to say that they never stopped running until they arrived home. When these men told their people in Bontoc what part they end, the insurrectos played in the fight against the Americans, the tension between the Igorot and insurrectos was at its greatest. The insurrectos were evidently worse than the Spaniards. They did all the things the Spaniards had done, and more. They robbed through falsehood. Consequently, insurrectos frequently lost their heads. Major Marsh went through Bontoc close after Aguinaldo in December 1899. The Igorot befriended the Americans. They brought them food and guided them faithfully along the bewildering mountain trails when the insurrectos split and scattered anywhere, everywhere, fleeing eastward, northward, southward, in the mountains. When Major Marsh returned through Bontoc after following Aguinaldo into the heart of the Quayangan area, he left in the Pueblo some 60 shoeless men under a volunteer lieutenant. The lieutenant promptly appointed an Ilocano president, vice president, secretary, and police force in Bontoc and also in Sagada. And when the soldiers left, in a few weeks he gave 7 guns to the officials in Bontoc and 2 to those in Sagada. A short time proved that those officials were untrustworthy men. Many were insurrectos who had dropped behind Aguinaldo. They persecuted the Igorot even worse than heavy insurrectos. They seemed to have the American army behind them, and the Igorot stood in awe of American arms. The crisis came. An Igorot obtained possession of one of the guns, and the Ilocano chief of police was killed and his corporal wounded. This shooting, at the time apparently unpremeditated, but, in reality, carefully planned and successfully executed, was the cause of the arrival in Bontoc Pueblo of the first American civilians. At that time, a party of 20 Americans was at Fitnesston, a long day northwest of Bontoc. They were prospecting and sightseeing. The Ilocano sent these men a letter, and the Igorot sent a messenger, begging them to come to the help of the Pueblo. 3 men went on August 27, 1900. They were Truman K. Hunt, MD, Mr. Frank Finley, and Mr. Riley. The disagreement was settled, and several Ilocano families left Bontoc under the protection of Mr. Riley. August 9, 1901, when the Board of Health for the Philippine Islands was organized, Dr. Hunt, who had remained in Bontoc most of the preceding year, was appointed Superintendent of Public Vaccination and Inspection of Infectious Diseases for the provinces of Bontoc and Lepanto. He was stationed at Bontoc. At that time another American civilian came to the province, Mr. Reuben H. Morley, now Secretary-Treasurer of the province of Nueva Vizcaya, who lived nearly a year in Tuluban, 2 hours from Bontoc. December 14, Mr. William F. Smith, an American teacher, was sent to Bontoc to open a school. Early in 1902 constabulary inspectors, Lieutenants Louis A. Pallas and Ernest A. Ifman, also came. May 28, 1902, the Philippine Commission organized the province of Lepanto Bontoc. On June 9, Dr. Hunt was appointed Lieutenant Governor of the province. May 1, 1903, Dr. Hunt resigned and E.A. Wagger, M.D., became his successor. The Spaniard was in Bontoc about 50 years. To summarize the Spanish influence on the Igorot, and this includes any influence which the Ilocano or Tagalog may have had since they came among the people under Spanish protection, it is believed that no essential institution of the Igorot has been weakened or vitiated to any appreciable degree. No Igorot attended the school which the Spaniards had in Bontoc. Today not 10 Igorot of the Pueblo can make themselves understood in Spanish about the commonest things around them. I fail to detect any occupation, method, or device of the Igorot which the Spaniards influence and improve. And the Igorot flatly deny any such influence. The Spaniard put the institution of Pueblo president pretty well throughout the area now in province, but the president in no way interferes with the routine life of the people. He is the mouthpiece of the government asking for labor and the daily necessities of a non-productive resident foreign population. The tax levied was scarcely in the nature of a modern tax. It was more the means taken by the Spaniard to secure his necessary food. In no other way was the political life and organization of the Pueblo affected. In the realm of religion and spirit belief, the surface has scarcely been scratched. The only Igorot who became Christians were the wives of some other Christian natives who came in with the Spaniard, mainly as soldiers. There are now 8 or 10 such women, wives of the resident Ilocanos of Bontoc Pueblo, but those whose husbands left the Pueblo have reverted to Igorot faith. In the matter of war and headhunting, the effect of the Spaniard was to intensify the natural instinct of the Igorot in and about Bontoc Pueblo. 19 men and 20 of Bontoc and Samoki have taken a human head, and it has been seen under what conditions and influences some of those heads were taken. An Igorot, whose confidence I believe I have, an old man who represents the knowledge and wisdom of the people, told me recently that if the Americans wanted the people of Bontoc to go out against a Pueblo, they would gladly go. And he added, suggestively, that When the Spaniards were there, the old men had much better food than now, for many hogs were killed in the celebration of war expeditions, and the old men got the greater part of the meat. The Igorot is a natural headhunter, and his training for the last 60 years seems to have done little more for him than whet his appetite. So mythology. Man. The Bontoc men average about 5 feet 4 and 1/8 inches in height, and have the appearance of being taller than they are. Again and again one is deceived by their height, and he repeatedly backs a 5'7" Igorot up against a 6-foot American, vainly expecting the stature of the brown man to equal that of the white. Almost never does the Bontoc man appear heavy or thick-set, as does his brother, the Bengal Igorot, the human pack horse being so constantly on the San Fernando Baggio Trail, muscularly one of the most highly developed primitive people in the world today. Of 32 men measured from Bontoc and vicinity, the shortest was 4 feet 9 and 1/8 inches, and the tallest was slightly more than 5 feet 9 inches. The following table presents the average measurements of the 32 men. Average measurements of Bontoc men. Measurements. cm. Stature, 160.287. Spread of arms, 165.684. Head length, 19.212. Head rank, 15.203. Cephalic index, percent, 79.1328. Nasal length, 5.25625. Nasal breadth, 4.1625. Nasal index, percent, 79.191. From these measurements it appears that the composite man, the average of the combined measurements of 32 men, is mesaticephalic. Among the 32 men, the extremes of cephalic index are 91.48 and 67.48. This first measurement is of a young man between 20 and 25 years of age. It stands far removed from other measurements, the one nearest it being 86.78, that of a man about 60 years old. The other extreme is 67.48, the measure of a young man between 25 and 30 years of age. Among the 32 men, 9 are brachycephalic, that is, their cephalic index is greater than 80. 20 of the 32 are mesaticephalic, with cephalic index between 75 and 80. And only 3 are dolichocephalic, that is, the cephalic index is below 75. The nasal indexes of the 32 men show that the Bontoc man has a medium or mesohigh nose. They also show that one is very extremely plateauline, the index being 104.54, and one is very leptorhine, being 58.18. Of the total, 5 are leptorhine, that is, have a near nose with nasal index below 70. 17 men are mesohine, with a medium nose with nasal index between 70 and 85. And 10 are plateauline, that is, the noses are broad, with an index greater than 85. The Bontoc men are never corpulent, and, with the exception of the very old, they are self-employed. During the period of a man's prime, he is usually muscled to an excellent symmetry. His neck, never long, is well-formed and strong and supports the head in erect position. His shoulders are broad, even, and full-muscled, and with seeming ease, carry transportation baskets laden with 75 pounds to 100 pounds. His arms are smoothly developed and are about the same relative length as the Americans. The hands are strong and short. The waistline is firm and smaller than the shoulders or hips. The buttocks usually appear heavy. His legs are generally straight. The thighs and calves are those of a prime pedestrian accustomed to long and frequent walks. The ankles are seldom thick, and the feet are broad and relatively short, and, almost without exception, are placed on the ground straight ahead. He has the feet of a pedestrian, not the intern feet of the constant, bearer of heavy burdens on the back, or the outturned feet of the man who sits or stands. The perfection of muscular development of 2/3 of the men of Bontoc between the ages of 25 and 31 be the envy of the average college athlete in the States. In color, the men are brown, though there is a wide range of tone from a light brown with a strong saffron undertone to a very dark brown, as near a bronze as can well be imagined. The sun has more to do with the different color tones than it has anything else, after which, habits of personal cleanliness play a very large role. There are men in the Bontoc Igorot constabulary of an extremely light brown color, more saffron than brown, who have been wearing clothing for only 1 year. During the year, the diet of the men in the constabulary has been practically the same as that of their darker brothers among whom they were enlisted only 12 months ago. All the members of the constabulary differ much more in color from the unclothed men than the unclothed differ among themselves. Man after man of these latter may pass under the eye without revealing a tint of saffron, yet there are many who show it faintly. The natural Igorot never washes himself clean. He washes frequently, but lacks the means of cleansing the skin, and the dirtier he is, the more bronze-like he appears. At all times his face looks lighter and more saffron tinted than the remainder of his body. There are 2 reasons for this, because his face is more often washed and because of its contrast with the black hair of the head. The hair of the head is black, straight, coarse, and relatively abundant. It is worn long, frequently more than halfway to the hips, from the shoulders. The front is banked low and square across the forehead, cut with the battle axe. This line of cut runs to above and somewhat back of the ear, the hair of the scalp below it being cut close to the head. From the mid-age, a few gray hairs appear, and some old men have a uniform iron gray color. I have never seen a white-haired Igorot. A few of the old men have their hair thinning on the ground, but a tendency to baldness is by no means the rule. Bontoc Pueblo is no exception to the rule that every pueblo in the Philippines has a few people with curly or wavy hair. I doubt whether today an entire tribe of perfectly straight-haired primitive Malayan people exists in the archipelago. Whom it is a curly-haired Bontoc man of about 45 years of age. Many people told me that his father and also his grandfather were members of the Pueblo and had curly hair. I have never been able to find any hint at foreign or Negrito blood in any of the several curly-haired people in the Bontoc culture area whose ancestors I have tried to discover. The scanty growth of hair on the face of the Bontoc man is pulled out. A small pebble and the thumbnail were the blade of the battle axe, and the bulb of the thumb are frequently used as forceps. They never cut the hair of the face. It is common to see men of all ages with a very sparse growth of hair on the upper lip or chin, and one of 50 years in Bontoc has a fairly heavy 4-inch growth of gray hair on his chin and throat. He is shown in PL. XIII. Their bodies are quite free from hair. There is none on the breast, and seldom any on the legs. The pelvic growth is always pulled out by the unmarried. The growth in the armpits is scant, but is not removed. The iris of the eye is brown, often ringed with a lighter or darker ring. The brown of the iris ranges from nearly black to a soft hazel brown. The cornea is frequently blotched with red or yellow. The Malayan fold of the upper eyelid is seen in a large majority of the men. The fold being so low that it hangs over and hides the roots of the lashes. The lashes appear to grow from behind the lid rather than from its rim. The teeth are large and strong, and, whereas in old age they frequently become few and discolored, during time they are often white and clean. The people never artificially stain the teeth, and, though surrounded by beetle-nut chewers with dark teeth or red-stained lips, they do not use the beetle. Since the Igorot keeps no record of years, it is impossible to know his age, but it is believed that sufficient comparative data have been collected in Bontoc to make the following estimates reliable. At the age of 20, a man seems hardly to have reached his physical best. This he attains, however, before he is 25. By 35 he begins to show the marks of age. By 45 most of the men are fast getting old. Their faces are seamed, their muscles losing form, their carriage less erect, and the step slower. By 55 Albanian legs are old, most are bent and thin. Probably not over 1 or 2 in 100 mature men live to be 70 years old. The following census taken from a Spanish manuscript found in Quiangan and written in 1894 may be taken as representative of an average Igorot Pueblo. Census of Magulan, District of Quiangan. years. Females, males. 0 to 1, 191, 200. 1 to 5, 209, 210. 5 to 10, 144, 123. 10 to 15, 132, 159. 15 to 20, 129, 114. 20 to 30, 121, 134. 30 to 40, 212, 239. 40 to 50, 118, 126. 50 and over, 79, 62. Total, 1,335, 1,367. From this census it seems that the Makulonigarot man is at his prime between the ages of 30 and 40 years, and that the death rate for men between the ages of 40 and 50 is nearly as great as the death rate among children between 5 to 10 years of age, being 52.7%. Beyond the age of 50 collapse is set in, since all the men more than 50 years old are less than half the number of those between the ages of 40 and 50 years. Woman. The women average 4 feet 9 and 3/8 inches in height. In appearance they are short and stocky. 29 women from Bontoc and vicinity were measured. The tallest was 5 feet 4 and 3/4 inches, and the shortest 4 feet 4 and 3/4 inches. The following table presents the average measurements of 29 women. Average measurements of Bontoc women. Measurements. cm. Stature, 145.800. Spread of arms, 149.603. Head length, 18.593. Head breadth, 14.706. Cephalic index, percent, 79.094. Nasal length, 4.582. Nasal breadth, 3.608. Nasal index, percent, 78.744. These measurements show that the composite woman, the average of the measurement of 29 women, is mesocephalic. The extremes of cephalic index are 87.64 and 64.89. Both are measurements of women about 35 years of age. Of the 29 women, 12 are brachycephalic, 12 are mesocephalic, and 5 are dolichocephalic. The Bontoc woman has a median, or Mizrahi, nose, as is shown by the above figures. 4 of the 29 women have the narrow, left or high nose with nasal index below 70. 7 have platypine or the broad nose with index greater than 85. While 17 have the median or Mizrahi nose with nasal index between 70 and 85. The broadest nose has an index of 97.56. And the narrowest an index of 58.53. The women reach the age of maturity well prepared for its responsibilities. They have more adipose tissue than the men, yet are never fat. The head is carried erect, but with a certain stiffness, often due, in part, no doubt, to shyness, and in part to the fact that they carry all their burdens on their heads. I believe the neck more often appears short than does the neck of the man. The shoulders are broad and flat across the back. The breasts are large, full, and well supported. The hips are broad and well fed, and the waist, there is no natural waistline, is frequently no smaller than the hips, though smaller than the shoulders. Their arms are smooth and strong, and they throw stones as men do, with a full arm throw from the shoulder. Their hands are short and strong. Their legs are almost invariably straight, but are probably more frequently bowed at the knees than are the men's. The thighs are sturdy and strong, and the calves not infrequently overarched. This enlargement runs low down, so the ankles, never slender, very often appear coarse and large. In consequence of this heavy lower leg, the feet, short at best, usually look much too short. They are placed on the ground straight ahead, though the tendency to injured feet is slightly more noticeable than it is among the men. Their carriage is a healthful one, though it is not always graceful, since their long strides commonly give the prominent buttocks a jerky movement. They prove the naturalness of that style of walking which, in profile, shows the chest thrust forward and the buttocks backward. The
Puts a little
abdomen is in,
electrical- oh, here's
and the
another
shoulders
makeup.
do not swing as the strides are made. It cannot be said that at base the color of the women's skin differs
Mr.
from that
Brother.
of the men, but the saffron
Who was
undertone is
Alfred
more
Mr.
commonly
Mask?
seen than it is in the unclothed men. It shows all the shaded parts of the body and where the skin is distinctive, as on the breast and about certain features of the face. The hair of the head is like that of the man's. It is worn long and is twisted and wound about the head. It has a tendency to fall out as age comes on, but does not seem thin on the head. The tendency to gray hairs is apparently somewhat less than it is with the men. The remainder of the body is exceptionally free from hair. The growth in the armpits and the pelvic hair are always pulled out by the unmarried, and a large percent of the women do not allow it to grow even in old age. Their eyes are brown, varied as are those of the men, and with a Malayan fold of the upper eyelid. Their teeth are generally whiter and cleaner than are those of their male companions, a condition due largely, probably, to the fact that few of the women smoke. They seem to reach maturity at about 17 or 18 years of age. The first child is commonly born between the ages of 16 and 22. At 23, the woman has certainly reached her prime. By 30, she is getting old. Before 45, the women are old, with flat, pendant folds of skin where the breasts were. The entire front of the body, in point folds, rounded and smooth, has become flabby, wrinkled, and folded. It is only a short time before collapse of the tissue takes place in all parts of the body. An old woman, say, at 50, is mass of wrinkles from foot to forehead. The arms and legs lose their plumpness, the skin is backed at the knees into half a dozen large folds. And the disappearance of adipose tissue from the trunk front, sides, and back has left the skin not only wrinkled but loose and flabby, folding over the girdle at the waist. The census of Magulam, page 42, should be again referred to, from which it appears that the death rate among women is greater between the ages of 40 and 50 years than it is with men, being 55.66%. The census shows also that there are relatively a larger number of old women, that is, over 50 years old, than there are old men. Child. The death rate among children is large. Of 15 families in Bontoc, each having had 3 or more children, the death rate up to the age of puberty was over 60%. According to the Magulam census, the death rate of children from 5 to 10 years of age is 63.73%. The newborn babe is as light in color as the average American babe and is much less red, instead of which color there is the slightest tint of saffron. As the babe lies naked on its mother's naked breast, the light color is most strikingly apparent by contrast. The darker color, the brown, gradually comes, however, as the babe is exposed to the sun and wind, until the child of a year or two carried on its mother's back is practically one with the mother in color. Some of the babes, perhaps all, are born with an abundance of dark hair on the head. A child's hair is never cut, except that from about the age of 3 years the boy's hair is bent across the forehead. Fully 30% of children up to 5 or 6 years of age have brown hair, due largely to fading, as the outer is much lighter than the under hair. In rare cases, the lighter brown hair assumes a distinctly red cast, though a faded lifeless red. Before puberty is reached, however, all children have glossy black hair. The iris of a newborn babe is sometimes a blue-brown. It is decidedly a different brown from that of the adult or of the child of 5 years. Most